Yo, what's up, everybody? It's time for Game of Thrones. This is episode 6 of season 7. And yes, I was one of those naughty, I would say few, but it was definitely wasn't few that watched the leaked version of the show. But of course, I didn't want to go ahead and start putting in reviews right away. Let everybody else watch it as a leak or as the official release, and then a couple days go by, and then I'll do my review as normal. Yeah, pretty good episode as far as just entertainment value. I do read and post on the A Song of Ice and Fire Reddit channel. Not a lot. I mean, I'm not a major contributor by any stretch of the imagination, but I do read the threads and post every once in a while, and of course, pretty much anything that HBO has done post books that have been completed by George R. R. Martin has been ridiculed, justly to a degree, and I think unjustly nitpicking to a degree by the more rabid fan base. So, of course, if you were to go by the impressions of the peanut gallery and so on and so forth, you would probably get a very negative impression of this episode, as if it was just, complete waste of time, complete garbage. I mean, yeah, you can definitely nitpick and, see a lot of the flaws, especially if you want to go through, compare it to previous seasons, compare it to the books, continuity, logic, and so forth. Yeah, there's a lot of holes in it. But like I said, my reviews are more of just more from the casual point of view of whether or not it's any the value of the episode and entertainment wise. And then I'm not here to be the encyclopedia of Westeros, and like some of the channels out there that are dedicated to the books and the show and can give you every single example of something that didn't make sense or contradicted something previous. But overall, like I said, the episode was entertaining. I guess it's the next episode is the season finale. I didn't realize that they were only doing 7 episodes. Shows how much I pay attention. I thought there was going to be like 8, but yes, 7 is it. But like I said, it did what it needed to do, and yeah, there were some kind of big, kind of head-scratching moments that didn't make a lot of sense, or were a bit of a stretch of believability and a suspension of disbelief. But like I said, overall, it wasn't too bad. It was kind of action-packed like it needed to be. I mean, the premise was silly enough to go up there to get one white to bring back and to show everybody, assuming it would still stay animated and not just turn to mush by the time they got there. I guess they could pack it on ice and bring it down, put it on the ship they bring it down with, and pack it in a ice block like like Encino Man. 90s reference for those of you old enough. Yeah. Anyway, so basically, you got their version of the Avengers, and I think is how Matt Easton of Scala Gladiatoria, a YouTube channel that did a good point-by-point discussion of actually the ending of of episode 5, and basically how everybody was armored or underdressed as far as the weather goes, weren't carrying the most ideal equipment, given they were going to be fighting the likelihood of fighting large groups of enemies and whatnot. So we can start from there. I won't go in as in depth, but yeah, basically this is according to reading. You read the books and all the descriptions of the North, and it gives you this kind of impression that it's the cold there is kind of it's a supernatural cold almost. It's makes the cold of our world seem insignificant, and pales in insignificance given how he describes it. So then, of course, what do you got? You got 7 guys and a handful of red shirts, wildlings, extras. that are going to go up into this bitter cold with not only the seasons changing, but you've also got the Night King and the White Walkers that bring winter with them or bring the cold with them. So even in a more intense extreme of cold, and they're all walking around without their hoods over their heads or wearing any kind of head cover or face cover. That's a frostbite. Not going to take long for, you ever, if it was like a sunburn, you can get, windburned or from that cold wind and air, and that, that'll make your face want to peel and redden up and raw and hurt like a son of a gun. If you've ever gone cross country skiing and you don't cover your face up properly, it could be an issue. So yeah, they got their furs on but they're all not covering their heads. And of course the excuse is, they got to be recognizable because they're the stars of the show and we got to know who they are. It's like they can flip the hood of their heads and still be visible. I don't think anybody's going to miss Tormund's big red beard there, or the fact that Jon's carrying Longclaw on his side, or the Hound is taller than everybody in the group, or so on and so forth. But anyway, so yeah, they're ventured off into the wild blue yonder and get a little bit of conversation amongst all of the different groupings that are walking along, and so a little banter here and there, nothing all that interesting. I guess, Jon gets a bit of a different perspective about Mance Rayder and Tormund's opinion of, maybe if he hadn't been so, determined to not bend the knee to anybody or any, invading force or ruler, that maybe that less of his people would have died. So that's something for Jon to reflect on. Then you have Beric and Thoros, giving Gendry a hard time about the being sold off to Melisandre. And the Hound kind of chastises him, given the fact that he's still alive. And of course, book-wise, from what I understand, that, the Brotherhood Without Banners was at the point where, Gendry was, going to be, of course, he was a stand-in for another character, I believe, that they gave to Melisandre. It wasn't Gendry, but by the time that she had purchased him for his blood or whatever, they weren't really aware of the threat in the north yet, so they acted kind of like they were, the whole time they were aware that, we got to go to the north to fight the Night King, but wasn't really the case. So kind of sloppy writing, I guess you could say. Then we have Jon Snow and Ser Mormont there, talking about his father's demise, and then Jon, of course, wants to give Longclaw back to him because it's his family's sword, but of course, Jorah basically says, "No, I've disgraced my house," blah blah blah. And if I was Jon Snow, I understand he's trying to be honorable, but still, you've got a Valyrian steel sword that kills the others with the touch of the blade. So why that? Just as from a self-defense position, why, or and self-preservation. What was he going to fight with? That's was he going to? Mormont ends up using like dragonglass like daggers or some pseudo short sword type things. But I guess I don't know. I guess that was supposed to be some moment between the two where Jorah was, thought enough of Jon Snow to give him the sword, or give him, his blessing to carry the sword as a symbol of his family. And don't forget that Jorah's also got the hots for Dany, and it's pretty obvious, and I imagine in his mind, that Jon is her potential love interest. So I think it's kind of a means of saying, there's not going to be any bad blood between the two of them, regardless, and that old Jorah probably isn't planning on having any other kids, or if he had, or kids, period. I'm not sure if he has kids in the book or not, but so yeah, he's not going to be passing down his bloodline. So he's, Jon, you and Dany can make babies or whatever, assuming that Dany can actually have children. Apparently, she seems to be under the impression that awakening the dragons is the only form of motherhood that she'll have. But who knows? I don't know if that's been set in stone or not in the book canon and lore. So I'll have to wait and see. Then, of course, we've got Audrey Horne and Sansa. No, sorry, I just got done doing my Twin Peaks review, so check that one out as well. Now, Arya, of course, and Sansa having this kind of odd sisterly angst, where Arya seems to pretty much just be. I mean, she got the note from that Littlefinger planted, and now she's kind of like this. I don't know. Kind of sanctimonious, self-righteous, anger towards Sansa. So I don't know really what the point of having them go at it like this serves, other than Arya being completely ignorant of what Sansa had to go through, and vice versa, and maybe Arya's trying to play it up because maybe she thinks that Littlefinger's watching the two of them squabble. But Sansa has some pretty good points. Arya definitely wouldn't have been able to have survived the same manner that she did when it came to Joffrey and Ramsay Bolton and so on and so forth, and the fact that without her, Jon would have been SOL as far as the Battle of the Bastards goes. So yeah, I don't know. It's kind of, to me, it's kind of cringy, the whole Arya kind of just going off on Sansa all of a sudden type of thing. I guess they needed to make it seem like, ooh, something could still happen, down at Winterfell while all the other stuff's going on north, so maybe, like this big betrayal, because that seems to be the twists and turns that we've had, are betrayals and backstabbings and whatnot. But I think at this point it's kind of a whole lot of nothing. It's just people are just waiting to see how, at least from the television show's point, audience are just waiting to see how Littlefinger gets taken out. In the books, of course, there's still more to deal with, and more time for that to play itself out, assuming it plays itself out anywhere near it like it does in the show, as far as Arya and Sansa and their reunion and whatnot. So it's kind of a big meh right now. Then the Hound and Tormund have a little bit of banter. The Hound doesn't like gingers, apparently. And then the Hound finds out that Tormund is got the hots for Brienne of Tarth, and which I'm sure he finds amusing. And then we get Jon and Beric talking about their experiences of, I guess, being resurrected because of the Lord of Light, and Jon still isn't really. He's not exactly, care too much about it. He's not like he was resurrected and all of a sudden became a worshiper of R'hllor or whatnot. So for him, it's still kind of a big mystery of why. And even though Beric maybe got a few little bits of insight, he still wakes up every day wondering why he was brought back as well. So he's not too much further on than Jon in that regard. So yeah, basically Beric's like, well, we don't really need to know much more than the fact that we're here because we are defending those that are incapable of protecting themselves from this perceived evil that is the others and the Night King. So even if the rest of the mysteries of their being brought back are kept from them, that's enough motivation as is, because if not them, then who else? That is the question. And that basically ends up the little bits of conversation the group has. They come upon the arrowhead-shaped outcropping of rock amongst the hills that the Hound saw in his vision. And then we get Daenerys and Tyrion talking a little bit, kind of back and forth. That seems to be Tyrion's good, he's good for nowadays. This little brief conversation brings up, her succession, her, as far as who will succeed her, after she's gone, and given she can't, apparently is under the belief she can't have children, and Daenerys says that she doesn't consider him a hero in this, or at least consider Tyrion a hero in the sense that he's foolhardy and rushes into things. He's brave and not cowardly, but he's also, I guess, shows the kind of constraint that Daenerys doesn't necessarily have, which is has kind of kept her from maybe going completely balls to the wall when it comes to attacking her enemies, and perhaps losing because of that hastiness, if you were to quote Treebeard. And of course, Daenerys seems still a little bit suspicious about Tyrion's loyalty to, at least to his brother, if not the rest of his family, which I don't know. I don't think ultimately he would pull some kind of sabotage. Definitely not for the sake of Cersei. I think that ship has sailed. Or even his brother, if ultimately he might sacrifice himself to save Jaime, but I don't think he would pull a screw job this late in the game against Daenerys just merely to save his brother's skin. I think he'd rather just go out sacrificing himself, because that way he's not alive to, even if he did, screw over Daenerys and lived and saved his brother, he'd still have to live with that for the rest of his life, and that probably wouldn't sit well. So we finally get to some action, which is pretty cool. Undead polar bear. I mean, polar bears are bad enough, living and breathing. I mean, those things are badass hombres, I tell you. And when you got one that's undead that, is controlled by supernatural powers and, can run roughshod over you, it can be pretty damn terrifying regardless of how many people you have. And unfortunately, I thought the Hound would overcome his fear of fire at some point. Maybe he's got another scene where he will, but I had a feeling that he would, step in and finally say, to hell with it. I'm not going to be afraid of fire anymore. I'm going to step in and save Thoros, but whom I thought was going to be killed in, outright by that attack. But apparently he's got a little bit of life left in him. He gets sealed up with Beric's sword of fire there, and keeps him alive for a little bit longer. But yeah, it was a pretty cool fight. I mean, it's a polar bear on fire attacking people with flaming swords and stuff. So that was pretty brutal, yeah. And having like those things running around when you have a blizzard and you can't see, more than 10, 15 feet in front of you, that would be pretty freaking scary. Alright, so then we get some more blah 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 Winterfell stuff with Littlefinger and Sansa. Like I said, it's just more of the same, nothing all that exciting really whatsoever. And then we get back to the hunt for the White to wrangle up, and so they ambush a White Walker, and killing it causes all but one of the Whites to crumple into a pile of bones, which, how convenient is that? So they realize that they may have been set up in the manner of a trap, which seems to be the kind of the prevailing opinion that at least after people watch the episode of The Night King pretty much set this up to be, as it were, so that he could get himself a dragon. with happen to have 3 javelins with him. You know, that's seems awful coincidental. But Gendry goes running off to send the ravens to get some help because they're going to be SOL without it. And the group, the Magnificent Seven, or the Seven Samurai in their red shirts, they're the NPC cannon fodder, are there, and they get trapped on that little outcrop of rock that's in the middle of the lake, or frozen lake, and wait until the morning. And the Hound decides to skip some rocks and pisses off or wakes up the whites and realize that, yeah, we're kind of here to kill all these bastards. And then shit hits the fan and gets real. And unfortunately, we skip back to Winterfell. More Winterfell. Winterfell's getting really tedious. Brienne of Tarth gets sent away by Sansa to King's Landing, probably to keep her from, I don't know, keep her out of the Littlefinger, Arya, and Sansa political quagmire, if you will. And then Dany gets message from the ravens. It must be traveling at the speed of sound to get there that quick. And it's time to dragons to go head up north and melt some ice and melt some whites. So the guys battle against crazy odds. And remember, was it Hardhome? How those, and even, and especially the time when Bran and company were attacked at the Three-Eyed Raven's place. I mean, these whites seem to be kind of toned down a bit as far as how powerful they are, because there's a legion of them, and these guys are kind of battling them back with, too much issue. And old Tormund, I thought they were going to sacrifice him, as throw a few of the guys to the God of Death to create some drama, but apparently everybody there has got pretty thick plot armor, except, unfortunately, for one of the dragons, which is sad. I mean, dragons are cool, and there's only 3 alive, and when the dragon gets killed, that's kind of a bummer. But then again, Drogon's the only the dragons that we've really seen, kind of have a connection with Daenerys as far as he's the one she always rides. He's one that's kind of always the one in there, kind of, at front and center when it comes to the dragons doing stuff. So, but the Night King obviously wanted to get himself a dragon one way or the other, and seems to have one hell of a throwing arm when it comes to that javelin. So the down goes the dragon named after her brother, or the cowardly brother, the Beggar King. So I guess that shouldn't be too surprising. Jon realizes that Drogon and his brother are next. Says get the hell out of here, and Jon gets tackled and knocked into the water, but somehow, of course, manages to escape the freezing cold water. And Deus Ex Machina Benjen comes down and clears the way, gets him on the horse, and then, there's no time. Pretty much no time. That seems to be the theme for a lot of this episode. Not enough time to explain or to even, get immersed in anything. And he swings his flail or chain ball of fire thing around and gets overwhelmed, of course. And Jon makes his way to the wall just in time. Gets put on the ship with Daenerys. They share some words. And of course we've got Arya masks or faces are found. She tells Sansa about being a faceless man. Wants her to play the little game of trying to make lies up that seem real. and then hands her the Valyrian steel dagger at the end. So maybe she wants to say, "Hey, I can take care of your problems." Give the girl a name, perhaps Peter Baelish. Maybe she'll take care of him and parade around his little finger. Who knows? But like I said, yeah, Dany and Jon Snow have their moment. He, sad about the dragons and everything. He finally decides, that he'll listen to Tormund and he'll bend the knee and accept her as queen. Well, a little tearful moment, kind of sappy, I guess, in a way. And then apparently the White Walkers sent some whites down with their scuba gear on or something. I don't know how deep the water is, but a lot of people are like, well, where the hell did they get all these giant chains all of a sudden? And someone did bring up that when Mance Rayder and his wildlings were assaulting the wall, they'd brought some chains with them with their mammoths to rip the doors down and whatnot. I don't know if it was that much chain. So there was some, I guess, theoretically around somewhere, but even so, I don't know if they would have really taken it with them. So it really is. They may would have had to gone by the wall by Castle Black already, which wouldn't make much sense either, since they've been marching on Eastwatch the whole time. So, for the convenience of the narrative, they have enough chain in order to drag the dragon out of the ice and water, and then of course the Night King works his magic and changes it into a white dragon, WIGHT, that is, not an ice dragon. Not an ice dragon, a white, just like the Walking Dead beings that they control. That's similar. Probably can fly because it's probably all of its wing and everything is, I'm assuming, is still intact. And maybe it'll breathe like a blizzard, or maybe it'll breathe some kind of demonic fire or something. It's hard to say. But I have a feeling we will probably see that dragon up and flying about in the next episode, so it should be pretty cool. But like I said, overall it was okay. The biggest issue I think I had with the fight with the guys and all the whites is that it wasn't very strategic. I mean, they were kind of, SOL and had to run out to that outcrop on the water to, mount their last stand. But like I said, just watching them, kind of just taking. I mean, other than Beric and Thoros with the flaming swords, and of course Thoros is dead at that point, but Beric with the flaming sword, and we know that the Valyrian steel doesn't really do anything to whites like it does to the White Walkers. There's no, you don't hit them and they burst into flame or something. So, it was a bit anticlimactic, where they were shown kind of wielding or fending off, these legions of these undead that, pretty much were, you'd have to chop into a million pieces or render them immobile through severe amounts of damage, and they're just kind of, fighting them off like that. Of course, it was just to delay until the dragons could get there and wipe them out. But so yeah, I can understand it was a bit anticlimactic. I think the polar bear part was probably the coolest part as far as that goes. And the little ambush or whatever. But the polar bear thing by itself, I think, seemed like the time when they were at least facing the most danger in a credible kind of situation. After that, and we know that the dragons are coming and that nobody else was going to get killed other than the extras, the wildlings that are there just to be cannon fodder. I mean, yeah, the stakes weren't high enough to really make us kind of, oh no, someone might die. I figured, Thoros died, but, in this show, he's not exactly a character we're near and dear to our hearts, if they had lost somebody like the Hound, which they probably won't, because they probably are still going to try to do Clegane Bowl, which I still think is stupid. But, if Beric and Thoros had gone, or even Tormund, even though he's kind of like the real leader of the wildlings, as far as their representative, it's the men of the North. So, and I didn't think Mormont was going to ditch Grayscale just to die from die up there. So the whole mission up north to get the White just kind of set this all up to be pretty ridiculous and rather anticlimactic, where because of the plot armor and anything. But it is what it is, I guess. And looks like the next, according to the preview for the next episode, everyone's going to meet up, all the opposing army forces, to try to hopefully convince Cersei that the enemy is the Night King, and they don't have any more time to be screwing around fighting amongst each other. We'll see how that goes, and I shall definitely review it and put it up for all of you when I get the chance. Until then, folks, take it easy.